What is up? So glad you can join us. Another edition of the Draft Show. He's Scott Bischoff. My name is Sean Baligian. Scott, talking about quarterbacks in week one, we didn't even have enough, and especially with the news this week that...
what news?
Well, where do we start? Peter King, amongst many people, and I know this doesn't surprise you, said that there are multiple teams out there, at least 5 was the terminology that he used, that Matthew Stafford is going to fetch a first-round pick. It would be in the Lions' best interest, to put this mildly, to see some kind of wacky, zany bidding war start. And it's always possible that could happen. But, I mean, let's start there. To say that you aren't surprised would be an understatement, huh?
Not surprised at all. His cap hit for the next 2 seasons is relatively low in relation to all the other quarterbacks who would make more money based on the cap hit than Stafford. And his production as a player, so we all in Detroit need to kind of set aside what our thoughts are on Stafford, because I think that around the NFL he's much more highly coveted and more thought of than a lot of people, than what people in Detroit think.
1,000%.
So when a team like Denver looks at Stafford and thinks, with their weapons, with Jerry Jeudy and Tim Patrick and Hamler and Noah Fant and the offensive line they have and Melvin Gordon, and all of a sudden you throw Stafford in the mix, yeah, they're contending with the Chiefs, but puts them right there, right? Or you look at San Francisco with their weapons and throw Stafford in that mix and buy parts of that offense, because they would go off. Those are 2 teams that I'm certain are involved.
By the way, a betting line, I don't know if you saw this, there's actually a betting line of where he's going to end up. There are co-favorites right now. It's Denver and it's Indy.
Yeah, so the Indy thing is interesting because they've picked 21, and the Lions would really have to get comfortable with the idea of, do you want Denver at pick 9 overall, San Francisco at pick 12 overall, or do you want to drop all the way to 21? And my assumption is that it's not just a first-round pick. You'd be getting other compensation too. But if it's with Indy, you're dropping down. So if you're in round 2, you're dropping down to, I'm going to say Indy has pick 54 in round 2. Denver has pick 40. San Francisco has pick 43. So not only are you moving from 9 or 12 to 21, but you're also moving from, say, 40 or 43 down to 54. And I think the cost for the Lions to look at dealing with Indy is realistically another first-round pick in 2022 because of how far you're dropping from, say, 9 or 12 to 21. But in the end, they have to be using all those assets to move up.
See, but here, you know what? Let's talk about this, and I'm going to react in real time. And based on what you said, I'm sorry, I don't want pick 21, and then even in 2022, after Stafford leads them to the playoffs, mid-20s I don't want 21 and 23. If those are my choices, or pick 9, I'll take pick 9. Seriously, I'll take 2 top 10 draft choices.
Understand that totally. I just think that if you're in a situation where the opposite side of this is that you're going to be using those assets to go up in the draft to take your quarterback. Let's say you want to deal with the Jets at 2 overall, and the Jets like the idea of having Indy's 2022 first-round pick in that deal, then that deal will happen. Does that make sense?
Or 1,000%, because you know what? I'll use the cruelest of switcheroos, the Miami Dolphins. Everybody thought that the Miami Dolphins would be the team that the Lions might be dealing with last year. Can you imagine if that situation was reversed this year?
It could. I mean, they have the 3rd pick.
Yeah.
They're in a perfect position to move in and around.
Does that sound familiar?
Yeah. It's crazy.
Didn't we just talk about this just a few weeks ago?
We got to let it go. No,
I'm not going to let it go. Do you know why I'm not going to let it go? Can I tell you why I'm not going to let it go?
I know why.
You know why, and you know how I am. Just confess you were wrong. That's all. That's all I'm asking. Like, it's so hard for people in this business to confess they were wrong. Here, can I give people an example? I'm going to look right in the camera. Guys, I was wrong about Bob Quinn.
Me too.
I was wrong about Bob Quinn. I really liked Bob Quinn. I was wrong. It's not the first time. It won't be the last time. I was wrong about Bob Quinn. Wasn't that easy?
It was
So
well
now,
done, too.
to many of you out there, and it's fascinating how some of the people you and I had conversations with kind of disappeared. You don't hear from them too many more. Hi.
How you doing?
This is a situation where it's okay to admit that it would have been in our best interest last year to take a quarterback. It's okay. And I get the argument. Let me, before the beat writers jump in, and I say this with respect to the beat writers, I get the argument that Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia weren't going to take a quarterback because in their minds they were trying to save their jobs. I get that logic. My logic all along was a quarterback wasn't going to save their jobs in 2020.
Okay, so we were never saying that the Lions were going to take a quarterback. We were saying they should take a quarterback.
There's your smart man.
And
there's your smart man.
Oh boy, we're in trouble if that's the case. So, I mean, did Okudah help them last year win games?
No.
Is he a very nice prospect going forward?
Yes.
Yes, he is. It's just year one is a tough transition, and it just is. So I suppose we should have reduced our expectations for what Quinn and Patricia were going to do. But if they were looking at that roster last year and they were really being honest with it, and they thought they were going to be competitive, playoff competitive, with a rookie corner and all the other stuff that went on with that roster, I think they were deluding themselves.
Absolutely.
I really do. And that's why it was frustrating that they were in a position to not have to really do anything and get a franchise quarterback, and they passed on it for a corner, and he could be, he could work out to be just fine. I will tell you that he wasn't a great fit for their scheme, which frustrates it further. But here we are. It's a year later. Stafford's moving on. The Lions need to leverage that play and to getting as much as they can, and then make the decision: do they want to get involved in this year's group of quarterbacks and get involved to the point where moving up as far as they can to take their guy, understanding that is very much unlikely to be Trevor Lawrence. So who is their guy? Is it going to be Zach Wilson? Is it going to be Trey Lance? Is it going to be Justin Fields? At this point, no idea.
If I had a dime for the amount of time somebody told you or me last year at this time, why don't you just suck this year and then you can get in the Trevor Lawrence sweepstakes next year. The one thing that you will never, ever be able to tell me is that you know where the Lions are going to pick next year, okay? And I will use last year at this time as an example, okay? Number one, they weren't going to suck all that badly with Matthew Stafford, okay?
No, Stafford was going to play them into a position where they weren't challenging for
Number two,
picks.
as bad as the Lions were in 2020, and they were awful, historically bad on the defensive side of the ball, they still managed to win 5 games, and they're only picking at pick 7. So that logic, as I pointed out to people time and time again last year, it doesn't flow. Part of the reason that they stunk in 2019 to the level they did is they went with who's going to be our starting quarterback this week after Matthew Stafford got injured. Period. That was a big reason why they ended up with the 3rd pick last year. So Scott,
they also, with Stafford playing, sorry to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
Cal. They also, with Stafford playing at an MVP type level for the first 8 weeks of the season, were 3-4-1. So it's not like, you needed MVP level play to be under 500 at the halfway mark. And yes, you finished 0-8 with Stafford hurt.
Yep.
So this was not it's tough in hindsight. Obviously, it's easy to say this, but even in the moment, it was frustrating that there was the concept that they needed to be playoff competitive in winning important games. And it's like Stafford played at an incredibly high level for half a season last year, and you were under 500. You're relying on rookie cornerback and a bunch of new names on defense. And one of the things that troubled me so much with Quinn in the end was that it was fill a position, create a hole, fill a position, create a hole, fill a position, and it was not building much.
Nope.
Fill a position with TJ Lang at right guard, draft Graham Glasgow, play Graham Glasgow at center, move him to right guard. All of a sudden, he's a really good player, but he makes too much money. We don't value the position, so let's create a hole by letting him go.
Yeah.
It's just that kind of stuff, right? And then, the signing of Vaitai we've been over it over and over. Very confusing. We talked about it at the time, and I feel like this is one of the moments where I look back on what we did last year, and it was spot on that they paid him to play tackle, knowing that there was no real idea he was going to play tackle, that they were going to go into camp with Tyrell Crosby and Vaitai battling out for the right guard, right tackle position, and the winner was going to play right tackle. And that's not a plan. That's firing money at a position and hoping it works.
1,000%.
Didn't work.
No. Didn't.
So it's those kind of decisions where you hope that from this new regime you don't see that kind of stuff, that there's clear and certain plans for putting players in positions to be successful. I don't know that was the case with what Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia did, but we're moving on. Stafford is going to be playing elsewhere, and I guess at this point, let's discuss what we think he's worth. I mean, what do you think he's worth on the open market? The more teams involved, the better.
It's 1,000%. I pray, and I have no reason to think that Peter King is throwing something against the wall with a guy with his cachet. There's no reason for him to throw things against the wall. If at least 5 teams are talking about a first rounder, then all that's going to do is go like this. Even with Deshaun Watson out there, because they're 2 different situations.
They are different situations, and I think that I think there are some teams who might feel Matt Stafford is more intriguing right now than Deshaun Watson, just because of the finances of what you have to pay Stafford, the cap hit in a situation where the cap hit, the cap is going to be reduced next year. I can see teams thinking we like Deshaun Watson more as a quarterback, and he's a younger player, so we would covet that more. But the cost to acquire him is incredibly prohibitive, and then you have to pay him. Where with Stafford, we're seeing a situation where he's signed for 2 years. I think any team acquiring him is going to extend him for a few years to, push out maybe some team-friendlier stuff at the end. And I think that there are teams that look at doing business with Deshaun Watson to acquire him and then have to pay him, and looking at Stafford and seeing similar type stuff. I'm not saying similar long-term, but I mean, there are teams out there who think they can be very competitive and win with Matt Stafford next year, and the price to pay to get Stafford is cheaper than it is for Watson.
You know what I have to do for you right now? This is where we have to go through all the scenarios, because look, if you've been paying attention to the National Football League, you don't need us to tell you. Quarterback's the most important position in football by far. It's not even close. Drop the argument. It's stupid. You're living 30 years in the past, okay? So that's why we're going to talk about this. All right, did I say that the best I can? Not to be condescending or dismissive.
But
it's real. That's the way it is now. So it's all about the quarterback right now. Have you heard anything? Okay, because I think it's safe to say Jacksonville's going to take Trevor Lawrence, right? That's
sure.
Sure. Okay, so let's just play a game and pretend. Trevor Lawrence goes number 1. Have you heard anything about the Jets and where they're at with Sam Darnold? Is there anything out there? Number 1,
it's
have you heard anything?
Season.
Number 2, is Sam Darnold salvageable?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
This isn't Josh Rosen salvageable either. It's the totally different level, right?
Yes, different level. The whole Rosen scenario speaks to why teams needing quarterback need to take multiple shots at it, because sometimes you miss, right? And you can't sell your soul to one guy, and if he doesn't work, all right, well, look, they moved on from Rosen and they have Kyler Murray, right? So it's a little bit like that. But I think you got to look at Ryan Tannehill as a Miami Dolphins player and look at what Adam Gase made him look like, and now look at Ryan Tannehill, Tennessee Titans quarterback, to be able to understand the Sam Darnold.
He had a damn good year. A damn good year.
He's a legit number 1 quarterback.
Yeah.
He is. Is he a perfect player? Is he a perfect quarterback? No, nobody is. Is Darnold a perfect prospect? No. I mean, does he make throws that you don't want him to make? Yes. But there's a reason why he got drafted where he got drafted. He's very talented. If you put him into a situation where you tailor an offense around the things that he does really well, absolutely he's salvageable. And though that's the way they're talking, is the way Robert Saleh's talking, is that they value Darnold Now, again, it's lying season, so you don't fully know.
True.
I think Cliff Kingsbury came in and said Josh Rosen's our guy, right? I'm pretty sure he uttered those words, and very quickly, Josh Rosen was gone. So,
he saw what he was dealing with.
yeah. So, in the end, it's you can see the Jets thinking that Darnold is salvageable in the right offensive scheme with the right tools around him, and it's something that he really hasn't had since he's been there. Who are their receivers? Who's there to really help him?
You're right. You're right.
A lot. So, just thinking from the Jet standpoint, they drafted Denzel Mims. He's a good receiver. They need another one. Could you see the Jets sticking with Darnold, using the second pick, trading out, and getting a bunch of draft capital,
Yes.
and then signing, because they have a lot of cap space, signing a guy like Kenny Golladay to come in and help Sam Darnold? Yeah, you could, not signing him, but making a play for a player like Golladay, because I'm not sure Galladay's. He's going to get tagged in Detroit, but long term we don't know. To answer your question, I think he's being talked about as being salvageable, and I think they're going to do everything they can to understand quickly whether or not that is the case, because they're in a prime position, just like the Lions were last year, that if you're not sold on Darnold being your guy, you can move on. You can draft quarterback 2, whoever they view it to be. But is Darnold, is he done? No, not at all.
So,
If the Jets were to move on from Darnold, I would think that he would be a player that some teams would, instead of jumping into the older quarterback market, some teams would rather jump into the Sam Darnold market and try to rebuild him.
So I think you know what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to sit here and say, if you want to be a part in perhaps the discussion, and I still think people don't understand this, Wilson is going to go very early. I would be stunned if Wilson is there at 7, right? Would you agree with that?
Floored.
Okay.
Floored.
All right.
Did you know he's Polynesian?
I still don't think that people out there get that.
Did you know that?
I see people talking about it on, and I've gotten a lot better in regards to jumping into conversations. I just know not to do it because it doesn't go anywhere.
So,
but like, if you're watching the show, I hope you're educated enough to, if you like Zach Wilson, and we both do, all right? And I didn't even know he liked Zach Wilson. I kind of assumed he did, but then I like Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson's not going to be there at 7. If that's the type of guy that you're looking at, that's when you make the phone call to the Jets. That's when, dare I say, you do the switcheroo and you make the phone call to the Miami Dolphins, okay? If you stay where you are, okay, you're probably talking about maybe Fields and Lance. Those are the two?
Yeah, I would think that Lance, because there's going to be some so there's a media mentality on Lance and then there's an NFL mentality on Lance, and it's to be determined, but I don't know that he's anywhere near as raw as a player as the media has made him out to be. I think he had an incredible season last year. He played one game this year, so there's going to be some, it's going to be a different process for him, but quarterbacks are drafted on their upside, and he has incredible upside. He does. So there's the balance. Do you balance a season off with a guy who played for 1 year? Yeah, the film was incredible for a year. Does he have flaws in his game? Sure. Are there things that he needs to work on? Yeah. Just like any quarterback. Right?
Sure.
But you're drafting on upside there. You're drafting on physicality and traits, just like you are with Zach Wilson. And the only thing that makes that argument where I hesitate just to touch is there are a bunch of older quarterbacks, like Stafford's an example. Stafford's going to go somewhere and take a team out of the quarterback market. So that's going to reduce the ability for teams, potentially wanting to come up to the Jets to maybe trade out, or Miami. You know what I mean? So some of this stuff is going to get resolved where maybe the draft day trade ups there's not as much action happening on that side of things, but there's going to be a lot to resolve itself over the next 6-8 weeks. I think there's going to be some resolution on some of these quarterbacks very quickly. I do. Obviously nothing's official until the league year starts, but we have to remember that the Lions owe Matt Stafford a $10 million
Mid-March
roster bonus. I think it's the 5th day of the new year. So they need to move him before.
It's around mid-March, yeah.
And I think at this point, we need to understand that this is going to be a very strange offseason, as last year was. And I think one of the reasons why the Lions made it known when they made it known, because there's some hemming and hawing about whether that was a good move or a bad move, but teams are starting to formulate their plans now, and it's smart to know that, hey, we're going to get Matt Stafford, and that's the building block of our entire offseason. I don't know that you'd want to spring it on teams and say late, February, early March that, oh yeah, Stafford's available. I think you want to do it now, right? So that teams can understand this is where we're starting this year, this offseason. This is what we're giving up, but this is what we're getting in return, and let's build from there. So I think it's smart what they did to put it out there. I also think it was serving the fans. I think there's a little bit of, we don't want to shock fans and just announce it that Matt Stafford's been traded.
Sure.
Because he's beloved here.
Absolutely.
So it's a little bit of a nod to fans that Matt Stafford requested. We talked about this a while ago, that this is the way to do it. Matt Stafford was going to have to put in the request, and that's how you spin it to make it look like, I'm not saying they're spinning anything. It's just that's the narrative, is that Stafford wants to be somewhere else. He wasn't interested in rebuilding again. He wants to win.
I can't blame him in any way, shape, or form.
Facilitate that for him, right? And maybe even include him in the decision making as to where he goes. But maximize what you're going to get, right? They need to walk away from Stafford with as much draft capital as they can, because they might be, like you're saying, they might be in a position to have to use that capital to go up to get Zach Wilson at, say, 2 overall. Because if you're moving on from Stafford, you need to have a clear plan. And it's one of the things I like about Holmes is those guys have been very bold.
Amen.
So,
Scott, the thing that like best case scenario, you find yourself in the position now that Miami was in a couple years ago, that the Cardinals were in a couple years ago, where they're going to stink the next couple of years. There's no doubt about it. But maybe, just maybe. Now, I wish we could find a Bill O'Brien to steal a bunch of picks from. That would be nice. But Bill O'Briens don't grow on trees. That's for sure.
It's unfortunate they couldn't have taken advantage of him.
But unfortunately, Scott, or fortunately in this case, I like the Lions are basically saying that right now. Look, we're rebuilding. Mm-hmm. This is like we want to do it the right way. We got a guy in that has a great reputation of knowing the draft, that knows the scouting. We have somebody looking over his shoulder in Dorsey as well. And to me, it's so much better to accept this is what you're going to be for the next couple of years, knowing that you're going to try to do things the right way and accumulate those draft picks. And you got to make those draft picks count. As always, that's unchanging. But Scott, I would much rather do it this way than try it the old-fashioned way, because, again, that wasn't working.
It wasn't working, and I think that let's just assume that you're keeping Stafford, right? If the Lions had come out already and we are not moving Stafford no matter what we're offered, he's here. Okay, my guess is that Brad Holmes at some point in time in the near future is rebuilding because Matt Stafford's an older player with some injury history. Is he going to be here for 5 more years? Are you going to extend him in 2 seasons? You're going to pay him a bunch more money to be here when your team is not competitive, and really, the window for winning is not. It's just not now. So why are you paying? This is where I think it's a smart move. Is they just don't match where they are. Right, the franchise is in a position, and Matt Stafford's in a position, and they're at very different places. Matt Stafford can go somewhere else and win now. The Lions are not winning now, even with Matt Stafford.
No,
they're just
sir.
not.
No, sir.
So, yes, there's work to be done on the defensive side of the ball, but the quarterback position in particular will be the most consequential move that Brad Holmes makes, and it will be the biggest decision they make going forward. And it's just a matter of, do they entertain the quarterback market this year, and if so, who, right? And how much does it cost to go get that guy?
Can I ask you, I'm going to put you on the spot because everybody has their big boards. If you had to rank your big board quarterbacks right now, what order would you rank them? Have you thought about it? Am I putting you on the spot too much?
No, it's okay.
Yell at me if I'm being mean.
No, it's a hard question to answer from the regard that you don't know exactly what their offensive system will be.
Sure.
But just from a fit and finish kind of mentality from a quarterback perspective, I think there's a 1A and a 1B in this class, and there's a gap between those guys, but maybe not as much as people think. And I think 1A is clearly Trevor Lawrence, and he's almost unreachable for the Lions. I just
Sure.
You can see a scenario, not to go off on a tangent, but you could see a scenario where Houston makes a play to go get the first overall pick using Deshaun Watson as a means. Now, is he going to waive his no trade clause to go there? I doubt it. But I mean, you could see how those two teams could maybe come to an agreement on that kind of a thing. But let's just assume Trevor Lawrence is off the board and sort of unreachable for the Lions. To me, Zach Wilson is, the things that he does fairly consistently are. I mean, he's not, by no means is he a finished product, right? He's not, but he does things at a high enough level that there's enough there that if you told me that he was going to play a lot for you in the first year, I don't think it would be horrible. So that's where and his upside is just as great as Lance and Justin Fields too. I mean, it's not that he's finished now, right? And then the floor, that his ceiling is lower and his floor is higher because of what he is as a player right now. He's got a high ceiling, and he's very productive in the ways that the quarterbacking position is played now. I mean, it's off platform, out of the structure of a play. When things break down, his desire is still to throw the ball. It's not necessarily to run. He wants to. He keeps his eyes downfield, even while scrambling and moving around and doing different strange arm angles and all this stuff. But he still wants to drive the ball down the field and attack downfield. Where with some of the other, like with Justin Fields, that's not necessary. When it breaks down for him, it's just run.
Sure.
Right. So that's why in some ways it's a tough question to answer because what are they looking to do? But so Lawrence is off the board. I think Zach Wilson is, of the group that the Lions can go get, would be one. Trey Lance to me has a huge ceiling. He has so much upside as a player in a different way than, say, Zach Wilson, where, I mean, he can make all the throws. He can do everything you want, but he's more physical. And there's just more physical component to what he is as a player. He's a perfect candidate for a guy to sit for a year and then to play, or to sit for half a season and then to play. And then there's Justin Fields, who there are splash moments. There are wow moments watching him play where he'll make throws that is an incredible throw. But
against Clemson,
there's some, yes, and there's some eye-popping stuff on watching him, but then there's some stuff that makes you question the Ohio State scheme, which it shouldn't be a knock on him if he's doing what he's being asked to do. One of the things that with him, he stays on his primary read a long time, which isn't really going to work at the NFL level, but I can understand why at Ohio State he does. I mean, if you're playing quarterback there and you have all the arm strength that you could want and you're protected, you're not being pressured, why would you ever come off of your primary read when at some point he's going to come open?
Yeah.
Right? So we shouldn't crush him for that, but there are some questions I have about his processing and then second read, third read type, and then out of structure stuff with him. To me, he's similar to he's a little bit like Dak, where you can see that you need to incorporate some of the RPO and some of the physical components of his game to get him in rhythm and structure.
Yeah.
But again, there are eye-popping throws that he makes. It's just there are some things that give me pause with him, where I think he's got some things to develop into where a player like Zach Wilson's already there. That's kind of the differentiating factor for me in that.
We've got about 5 minutes, and yeah, I know. So go. I'm gonna wind you up. Go.
So let's talk about Kyle Trask and Mac Jones.
I want to hear it.
Those are the two guys who I think you could potentially see at the middle to bottom of round one. Mac Jones, by all accounts, has looked really good in the Senior Bowl, and one of the things with him is that you wanted to see him away from the Alabama offense. I want to see him away from throwing the ball to wide open Devonta Smith and wide open Jalen Waddle and everything that the Alabama offense is. Now, he's not being pressured in Mobile, and it doesn't surprise me that he's very accurate and he looks good, but his issues are more mobility, and his feet are slow, right? And he's going to struggle if he's pressured. He just is. And Kyle Trask is the same way. They're both really, they're statuesque in their athletic traits. So out of the structure of a play, you're not going to get much from them. They need to be protected. You mentioned it last week. Mac Jones needs to be protected. He cannot be pressured. If he's pressured, he's in trouble.
Yeah.
Trask is the same way. Trask has a bigger arm than Mac Jones. Mac Jones is accurate. He's a developmental player. So is Trask. The guys in front of them, the four we mentioned, while also being developmental, are much readier to play, and I think they have much higher ceilings than Jones or Trask. That's where the quarterback position is as far as round one goes.
Let me put it this way. I'd rather not hear any talk, and I'll let you comment on this. We'll go back to some of the proposed things, okay? We'll go back to San Francisco. San Francisco and the Lions get together. I can hear somebody say, well, you can take fill in the blank, and we'll talk about who fill in the blank might be, non-quarterback at 7. And then you can use San Francisco's pick and take Trask or Mac Jones. No.
There's no value in doing that.
No. I think if you take a second-tier guy, you're taking a second-tier guy. Now, that doesn't mean that. Look, Russell Wilson obviously worked out very well and everything, but
it's a black swan, though.
Yeah, this isn't a guy with a skill set that a Russell Wilson brings to the table.
And if you're going to do something like that, you would say, all right, let's say it's San Francisco and you have pick 43 and you have your own pick 41. I think it's 41. You would offer pick 41 and 43 to go up to, say, pick 30 or 31 to take the quarterback there.
Yes.
You wouldn't be reaching at 12 to take a quarterback. It
or 21 or whatever the case may be. No, you don't want anything to Indianapolis, using Indianapolis Indianapolis is 21, right?
21, yes.
Okay. Yeah. No, I don't do that at 21.
No, there's too much value to be had elsewhere, and there's a reason these guys are. There's a reason the 4 quarterbacks we mentioned first are coveted in this draft, and there's a reason why guys like Mac Jones and Kyle Trask, are considered a little bit, down the board a touch, and it has everything to do with athleticism and the ability to do things when things around them break down. Now, in the Alabama offense, things didn't really break down that much. In the Florida offense, between Kyle Pitts and Kadarius Toney and all their weapons, things really didn't break down all that much. But at the NFL level, it's going to. And when you can't make plays when things are breaking down around you, your offense is super limited. So that's the issue with those guys, is I think their athleticism is capped, and you're getting a lesser than player, a lesser than talent. Not saying they shouldn't be first round picks, because I think they both could be bottom of the first round type players. But for what the Lions are looking for and having to jumppstart things, that's not necessarily what you'd be doing.
You want a full-fledged franchise guy. And I listen, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I don't think that Mac Jones or Trask are full-fledged franchise guys.
No, I don't think they are either. And so it's the question then becomes: is do you sign a free agent who can play for you for a year and not wade into the quarterback situation this year? And to me, it's a mistake, because it's like, it's furthering the time it's going to take to get this thing headed in the right direction. And we don't know.
Don't know.
Just like last year with Miami, the whole tank for Tua thing, right?
Yeah.
You don't know how that's going to play out, and you cannot tell players in an NFL locker room that they need to be losing football games.
Absolutely
not. You just
not.
cannot, and this group is not going to do that. So I think you're jumping into the quarterback conversation, and it's just a matter of at what point and where do they have to go to get their guy. And I really hope it's Zach Wilson personally, because he's fun to watch. He can make every throw that you want. He plays with a style that I think the city would love. There's a flair to which he plays with, sometimes too much, right? Like, need to be so flashy at times. But he does things. He does some rare things.
I
He does
like it.
Oh, he
kinda-
would be loved.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's Mahomes. He doesn't. It's not Mahomes, but it's Mahomes like where he'll throw. He doesn't need his feet to be set to make accurate throws. He doesn't need to come from the perfect arm angle. He can make. He's like a shortstop making throws.
I love the guy. I told you.
He's a phenomenal prospect. But if they decided that it was Trey Lance as their guy, you could get behind it and you can understand it. If they decide that they want to run an offense that's tailored around Justin Fields' skill set, I can understand it. But you need to understand that if they're doing that, they're running lots of RPOs. They're running lots of running plays for him so he can be productive and in rhythm and tempo. So that there's divergent ways to think about what you want on offense. They should be in a position to go get their guy. It's going to be costly to do it, but you're going to use some of the assets you get from the Stafford deal to do that.
Well, again, sorry for talking so much quarterback in these first two. We have to this year.
Let's talk quarterback next week.
Yeah, we might have to talk quarterback again next week, too. No, we're going to talk about some other things, but I think everybody knows where the Lions are at right now. This is one of those rare times where every single human, every single Lion fan says we need a quarterback. The question is, where do you get said quarterback? But definitely, this is one time where we all agree with that. All right, any final thoughts before we get out of here, pal?
No, I guess the only thing I would say is I would expect some resolution with the Stafford conversation sooner than later. It wouldn't surprise me if next week at this time we know where he's going to be, and it's kind of an agreed to sort of, we can't make this happen just yet, but this is where we're ending up kind of thing, for the reasons that I said, that teams need to jumpstart their offseason plan, and really you need to know. What you need to know, I mean, if the 49ers are jump-starting their offseason plan without knowing whether Stafford's going to be there or not, it's almost like wasting their time.
Yep.
So we'll see. I think that we're going to have some resolution and some clarity as to what they have going forward. This is an exciting time. It's also a very volatile time. It doesn't mean that moving up to 2 works.
Yeah.
It might not, but that's kind of the nature of the beast. It's just because you go up to 2 and you take a quarterback doesn't mean it's going to work. It's not a guarantee, but you have to take the shots. It's like hockey. If you're not throwing pucks at the net, you can't score, right?
Gretzky's quote.
Yeah, right.
You don't score on 100% of the shots that you don't take.
And they may have to take a couple of shots to get this quarterback situation resolved.
Hey, come over. Let's make some ribs. Let's work on ribs together, okay?
Yeah.
Don't worry. I got your back. Yeah. You help me out, I help you out. That's the way it works. We appreciate you joining us. We appreciate the Fish, the one and only.
Thanks, Fish.
Fish is a man of many talents. He does many things around here. He's the best at throwing the flag as well. He does a pretty darn good Joik Bell imitation as well. For Scott Bischoff, my name is Sean Baligian. We'll talk to you next week, Draft Show.